Hey Christian, I have a question for you. If you were God, I understand that none of you are, but if you were, how would you spend this whole book talking to man? I mean, let's face it, out of this whole book, okay, this whole book, this much is New Testament, this much is Old Testament, this much is all about Jesus, and this much is all about God. Of all of this that's about God, hang on, it's a small section. Only this much is about the creation of the world and science. Think about our world. How important is science to our world today? Everything from television to cell phones to biology and medicine and doctrine and everything. I mean, science is big. Why is it that you think that science should only fit that much of your book? And I say that much, being very generous. That's just the book of Genesis. But let's be honest with ourselves. Story of Jacob has nothing to do with science. Joseph has nothing to do with science. Moving to Egypt. The Pharaoh's dream interpreted has nothing to do with science. There's more that has nothing to do with science. Rachel has nothing to do with science. Jacob and Esau has nothing to do with science. I'm just feeding back. Isn't basically just the first 3 to 4 chapters science related? You throw Noah's story in there with the creation story, and that's all the science you basically get. If I'm God, here's how I write the Bible. First, I state how I made the world. And I'm specific. This is the inspired word of God. I think He would have the ability to tell people in ways that they could write it down. For example, instead of saying things like, the sky was a canopy over the earth like a tent, I would say things like, the earth was round like an orange, and the sky was like its peel. The skin of the orange was like the atmosphere of the earth. I would say things like, I created a form called gravity, which would pull you inward towards the center of the mass of the earth in which you stand. I would say things like, the earth spun in order to make the light shine on one side but not the other, creating day on one side but not the other. Instead of saying things like, God created the heavens and the earth, and that was the end of a day. What was a day? The sun hadn't went around the earth yet because He hadn't created the sun yet, but a day had ended. And then He created light, and He separated the light from the dark, and but the light is the sun, and you separate it from the dark because there's just shadows because it hit the earth, which you already created. So you didn't create nothing because it was already there. Oh, and then why not make it clear? Since you're God, you could do that because you're all powerful and all knowing, and you can put it the way that it was meant to be. Why not go ahead and state there are little tiny devices that I have made which are called viruses, and bacteria, and they will cause problems for you if you don't stay sanitary. Versus women should submerge themselves in pools of water. Why is it that the woman's menstrual cycle has got to be something dirty? Just say, hey, you might want to wash that off. Isn't that what you're really saying? I understand tampons hadn't been invented, but I mean, seriously. Isn't that all you're saying? Wash that off. Men shall not go unto her until... Why not just tell us how to take care of it? You're God, you made it. Why don't you just fix it? Oh, that's right. Because you don't exist. What am I thinking? If you're God, wouldn't you explain the most difficult scientific things that men would figure out later on? And not spend several books. I mean, let's look at this. Everything from Exodus to Deuteronomy was all about Noah and his people getting out of Egypt. What is that in comparison to teaching us about electricity? How much more could have been done if God just told us about electricity in His book versus telling us about Noah and Moses and every other loser in the Old Testament? I mean, seriously. If you were God, what Bible would you write?